And now it's my pleasure to introduce our second speaker, Ms. Wangoi, who has been a long time friend of Special Olympics Kenya. And we are honored to have her here with us in the region today. She comes from the other side of the coin. Gustavo has given us one side of the coin, what we need to do as programs. Now we want to hear from the other side of the coin, and which would be the sponsorship and the donor perspective. Over to you, Ms. Wangoi.
Thank you, Susan, and good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone, and good evening. So from wherever you are in the world today, I hope that you're having a good time and that you're enjoying the session. I'd like to say thank you to Gustavo. Very interesting session, very detailed. I'm afraid I'm not as detailed as he is, but I hope I will be able to give you sufficient information to inspire you to continue in your quest as you fundraise for your organization. So I'll just take a minute just to introduce myself. I am a marketing specialist at Safaricom. Safaricom is Kenya's largest telco. We are now looking at shifting into the technology space. So you will hear that our focus no longer remains in the telecommunication area. We're looking at developing technology as a lifestyle for our customers. We've also started to expand across Africa, and now we are in Ethiopia, and we're looking at other markets as well. I am a sports enthusiast. I actually sit on the Kenya Rugby Union board in Kenya. I have also volunteered at the National Olympic Committee of Kenya. My recent appointment saw me take the Kenya team to Tokyo in Japan. That was exciting, a very nice experience. Very difficult, very challenging during the times of COVID, but it was fantastic opportunity and experience. I have worked previously at Safaricom as a sponsorship manager, and I've also worked at the Resource Alliance. Some of you may have heard of that organization. They teach people how to fundraise. And so I learned quite a number of tips from there, and I've seen that Gustavo has covered quite a number of them. So I'm excited about that. And of course, I am a mother, a wife, and I have 2 teenage sons. So you can imagine what a challenge that is to keep up with them. Now, please go to the next slide so that we can just begin the session. I have prepared some notes, which I will go through today. I hope that what you want to achieve is what I want to achieve. I think I want to learn as much as you, and I've begun to learn already. So thank you for the opportunity and for reaching out, Susan and your team. So I hope today that my session will empower you and give you at least some information, some insights around what we look at as an organization that is looking to support organizations like yourselves in different ways. Next slide, please. So we won't go much into this. This is just, so that we are on the same page. What is fundraising? And I think you all know what fundraising is, so that we just begin on the same level. You or I, we are looking for funds to support our organizations, whether they are, businesses, are they charitable organizations, are they government agencies, are they sports organizations? So everybody fundraises in some way. Fundraising is also done in the corporate sector because we do fundraise to run our operations, whether it's through bank loans or venture capital deals. That is a form of fundraising. And I'm sure you've heard these young startups coming up, they fundraise to get some seed capital to begin their businesses. So it's all about seeking contributions from other parties to begin or to support a cause. Next slide, please. So as you begin your journey in fundraising, and I heard a lot of people asking about where to start, I think for me as a fundraiser previously, and also as somebody who has evaluated lots of proposals and provided funding for some organizations, it's important to start right at the beginning. So if you can go to the next slide, we can talk about how do you plan to fundraise and where do you start? So always think that you need to establish a strategy, a fundraising strategy, so that you can focus your energy and also be able to maximize on the opportunities that are available to you. But where do you actually start? So many of you are leaders in different organizations. And the reason why you're a leader in an organization is because you understand your micro and your macro environments, how those are supporting you or they are challenging you to remain in business or to remain as an organization, a sustainable organization. So you need to start by doing your environmental scanning. Look at what is there outside, what is there inside. So externally, for those of you who maybe come from the business environment or have had some business training, you know that the PESTEL tool is used to do an environmental scanning, an external one. So you look at the political environment, for example. I'll give an example of Kenya. Right now, we are deeply in a political state. We have elections coming up in August, and everybody and everything is focused on that. So that, in a way, could or could not affect an organization that is trying to raise money. We look at the environment, we look at society, we look at technology, we look at ethics, we look at legal issues. So all these external factors, how do they play for my organization? So is my organization poised for managing the environment well? Or is it about the environment? Or are the things that I do pro-environment? From a social, cultural perspective, am I properly placed in my cultural areas that I do my interventions? Am I politically correct, for lack of a better word? Who are my associations? So like someone mentioned, is alcohol really the right product to position the Special Olympics, for example, or an organization that deals with children? So obviously those kind of issues need to be addressed, and you need to know what they are, what the implications are as an organization as you begin your strategy and your planning. So beyond doing your external environment, and you can actually Google this for those of you who have never come across PESTEL, and find out what those elements are, and they teach you also, they show you how to get that information. For your internal environment, you look at your SWOT. What are your strengths as an organization? What are your weaknesses? What then becomes your opportunities and your threats? So remember, your opportunities and your threats are more external facing, while your strengths and weaknesses are more internal. So how do you balance them? And based on your SWOT analysis, how then do you identify any opportunities and any gaps that there are? And then I think it's also very important to perform a stakeholder analysis. So you need to map your stakeholders. Who are your stakeholders? Are they your board members? Are they your management? Are they your employees? Are they your volunteers? Are they the athletes that you manage or that you support through your programs? Of course, you have your local and national and international organizations that you are linked to. Those are your stakeholders. So you need to do a map that says, these are my stakeholders. This is who I deal with either on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And how I communicate to them and what I communicate to them is important for you to lay out and to plan, so that you are managing those stakeholders as they expect to be managed. I know an important stakeholder in all of this is usually government, and I don't know how involved government is in your funding as organizations. But from the experience that I had with the Olympics, they were a key stakeholder, and we had to manage them very, very carefully. Every day we had to have consultations, we had to raise any objections with them or escalate any issues that were coming up. So there are very important stakeholder that needs to be managed as aggressively as they are in their demands for attention. Next slide, please. So as you begin your fundraising planning, it's important to look at what will you raise and where will it come from, okay? And I think we've looked at who are the likely donors. I think in Gustavo's presentation, he mentioned a few of these. Are you going to target the public? And how are you going to target them? Are you going to do an event? Or are you going to do crowdfunding, which is, now we have some interesting nifty tools online that allow people to donate money to your cause. How do you do that? And is that the right strategy for your organization? Are you popular enough that if you were to go public with an event or a proposal for people to send you money, that they would respond? So that would be very interesting, that when you learn what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and you identify your opportunities, then you can decide, actually, maybe public really isn't for me because I am maybe just starting off in my country or in my area, and people don't really know me. So maybe let me look for another strategy or another way to target any potential donors. The government is an important target donor or a sponsor, so to speak. And they like proposals, written proposals, lots and lots of stories. I do not know why, but government like to document a lot of stuff. And I don't know in your countries whether that is the case, but I know in Kenya that, you can't go to the government with a PowerPoint presentation. They'll tell you, put it in Word and send us a document. So imagine my shock when we began to work with the ministry for the Olympics, and I had these really jazzy presentations that I would do in meetings, and they would say, no, yeah, they look really nice and very good, but can you put them in a document that you can read through like prose, and then have someone at the bottom there say approved, approved, approved for all the proposals that we were presenting to them. So again, and when you understand that, yes, your target market or your target audience is government, then you need to understand how they want the proposals presented to them. For corporate companies, again, depends on the company, and you need to do your research again. Safaricom, we are very interested in events that position us because they give us exposure and allow us to interact, like Gustavo said, with fans, with your fans. So I want to reach as many people as possible because they are already my customers or they are potential customers. So events are a very good way of doing that. But I also want to see a proposal that is well thought out and presented to me, so that I am not thinking, oh, these guys are a bit disorganized. Maybe I shouldn't even fund them. Then there, of course, the institutional donors. Some of you may have worked with institutional donors like the World Bank and such organizations. They want proposals, again, very detailed proposals. You could actually be lucky as a Special Olympics organization to work with an institutional donor, because they have begun to look at sport as a channel or a way in which they can reach a population that they would never have reached before. And it would excite them in some cases to actually look at you as an organization and work together with you. Again, patience is required here, and of course, the writing of long proposals. Foundations are a good place. Again, they are similar to corporate companies. They want proposals, they want events, they want to be seen out there, to associate with you and your fans, because you give them the extra audience and you give them visibility. Next slide, please. So as you plan your fundraising, I'll just go quickly through this one. Always plan, write down everything. What are your tactics? What are your actions? What are your measurements? So you've done your strategy. And if you're going to do, for example, an event, what kind of an event will it be? Where will it be? Who will you invite and why? So all that planning will need to be done before you begin. And then you need to find a way to measure. Remember, a lot of donors want to know and understand, okay, yes, I'm going to give you money, but where is it going and how are you controlling it? So what measures have you put in place to make sure that the effectiveness of that proposal or that activity that you're doing is there? So I want to know as a donor or as a sponsor, yes, I need to see your activity plan. Probably the more money I give you, the more I'll get involved in the planning and execution of your activities. But I want to understand that you can actually measure and control the funding that comes. Next slide, please. So of course, every time you raise money from anybody, it doesn't matter whether it's government or corporates or foundations or even individuals, you have to be accountable and you have to say thank you. So always remember, please, to do that, because then it opens the path for future relationships. And I feel as a donor or as a sponsor, I feel acknowledged and privileged that we had this relationship, and I would like to continue it in future. So let's go into why we donate, the donor's perspective. Why do we donate as donors or as sponsors? Why do we give you money? And we are mission driven. Next slide, please. We are on a mission as well. As a corporate organization, and I'll speak for Safaricom, we have got targets, yes, commercial targets. We want to generate as much revenue as possible for our shareholders. But we do have a purpose. And that purpose, if you understand the purpose, you'll understand that the reason why we will donate or give money to you or sponsor you or partner with you to do something. So once we appreciate that we are on the same page, then we will give you the money. Remember that you have to do your research. However, you have to understand who I am, what drives me, what are my other things other than, of course, commercial objectives. What are my other purposes? So for example, at Safaricom, we have the SDGs, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. We have aligned most of our activities in the company, whether they're commercial or not, to the SDGs. So we do then support activities around those. We support the activity of transforming lives. So if you have a transformative project that you want us to fund, then we will look at that definitely. And if it aligns with our mission, then we will support it. We also trust your organization, and trust doesn't come easily. Organizations like yours, Special Olympics, I think have been in existence for a while. You have a track record, you do certain activities. They can be traced and tracked, and there's some history. So we trust that you will always be there, and that you will not misuse our money. So we will do, of course, our due diligence. We will research you. We will look at the way your proposal is presented, and that's why I started at the beginning and said, what is your strategy? Do you understand your opportunities, and how do you take advantage of those as you present and create fundraising opportunities? We get to see the impact. So obviously the reason why we want to sponsor you is because we get to see the impact. Some activities are immediate, some are long-term. So long as there's an understanding of when the impact comes or how the impact comes, then we appreciate that. And we say, okay, yes, let's give this organization money because we can see that they have an impact or they will have an impact. Next slide, please. So we also have a personal connection to your cause. So for example, you'll find that there are some business leaders who have been personally affected by things like e.g. cancer or the environment, are passionate particularly about certain things. So because we as an organization, we tend to follow our leaders and our leaders' passions. And so if our leaders then have a particular passion with something or a connection with something, then you'll find that we are more likely to sponsor something or to support something over something else. So I hope that's clear. It's fundraising and sponsorship is also a very personal affair. It's not just all books and, you know, if your table adds up and all that, there's always that extra thing. And if there's that connection, a personal connection to a cause, then definitely there'll always be an opportunity to get the funding. Then of course, we want to be part of something big, something special, something that is beyond me, that I would not be able to deliver on my own. And that's why organizations like yourselves exist, because I can't be you. And of course, probably you can't be me. So how do we work together in this society to just make sure that we fill the gaps and we move ahead together? So Safaricom would want to be some part of something like the Special Olympics. That association is important. And so you provide that opportunity to me. It's a win-win. So we then, of course, donate or we sponsor. And then you've caught my attention. As the sponsorship manager, for example, because I am the one who sits and looks through the proposals, I need to be inspired by you and your idea. Otherwise, I'll put it in the pile that says regret. And you can imagine having to go through over 300 to 500 letters in a month, and you can only support 10 or 15 causes. How do you decide what makes the cut and what does not? So you need to catch my attention. And it's tied and linked to the others, that I want to be part of something, that it has to have a personal connection. I can see the impact. So all these things are tied together. Catch my attention, and definitely I'll put you in the pile for consideration. Of course, the big bosses make the decisions, but if you've got my attention, then you're likely to catch the attention of the leadership team that makes the final decision. And then, of course, finally, we want the tax benefits. I think those of you who are from Kenya, you know, recently our Minister for Sport provided an approval to corporate companies that want to sponsor anything in sports. I think it was last Friday. You have to approach the ministry and say you'd like to sponsor a particular sport and apply for a tax benefit or a tax reduction. So that's an important milestone. We've been asking for this for a long time as corporates. I know a lot of sports organizations have also been asking for it because it increases their chances of raising money and being able to, of course, attract, you know, even more donors and funding. And so even those smaller organizations that don't have as much money as Safaricom, for example, will be willing to support some of these causes so that, and especially we're talking about sports here, some of these sports organizations, because that will definitely take them to the next level. And then finally, of course, you know, this thing we talk about called diversity and inclusion. I know you guys understand it very well. You are Special Olympics. And so there is this big movement that people want to be inclusive. They want to say that they are diverse. And one of the objectives, even for Safaricom, is to make sure that we have you know, a diverse workforce, and that we are seen to be inclusive. And this goes beyond the gender discussion, right? So how do you appeal to that target or that particular goal of mine? So things to consider as you plan your fundraising. So finally, let's go to the final slide. What do we expect in return from you as you receive our money and go and implement your programs. We want you to be honest. Integrity is a key part of this relationship. And if we want to continue having a relationship, we would like that you are honest with us. And then accountable. Are you accountable with the funds that we give you? Can you tell us how you spend the money? And of course, not misappropriate it. Account for it properly. And then, did you have an impact, or do you have an impact? What is that impact? Can you see it? Can you measure it? Sometimes you really can't measure impact, but then you can demonstrate it sometimes, and you can show it. You can't really explain it sometimes, you can't quantify it, but you can actually show a change, and what is that change that has come about. And then, of course, we want to be visible. We want to be associated with a cause. Show me how I will be visible, or how I can be associated with you, because then that helps to highlight my profile. It raises my profile, and that for me is important. So if you're able to do that, then definitely I am more willing to sponsor or to donate to your cause. So in conclusion, I have just a few examples of fundraising campaigns that we've done that I know of, and they're not many. And let me tell you, when you try and Google these campaigns and you do not find any information. So I think it's also a challenge to us who raise money, are successful, that we document some of this stuff and we share, because that's how people learn. So I just found a few examples that I think you guys should be able to use, to refer to see the impact and to see why, and maybe you start to begin to understand why we sponsored some of these activities. So in 2011, over 10 years ago, those of you who are Kenyan or are in Kenya, or follow Kenya very closely, there was the Kenyans for Kenya fundraiser that we started as Safaricom in partnership with Red Cross and several other, of course, corporate leaders. The objective was to raise money for families that were starving in Turkana, and we raised over $10 million. This campaign, of course, went across from the corporates to the individuals. Everybody was encouraged to play their part. It was a huge, huge, huge success. So you can look it up. I think there's some stories online somewhere that you can read about that. Those of you who are in the health space or have come from the health space or have some association with health, I think sports and health should go closely together, hand in hand, to be honest, because one affects the other, or the other affects the other. I don't know which way. I don't know which one leads, but so we had this campaign called the Stop the Flying Toilets. Kibera is one of our largest slums in Nairobi, and the sanitation conditions are not excellent. And so this campaign was to help build toilet facilities for the people in the slum, because they didn't have any other decent way of using the toilet. So you can imagine what flying toilets means when you think about it. And it wasn't very pleasant. So there was a big campaign done, I think it was 2005, 6, I can't remember the dates. Big campaign. I learned a lot from that, actually worked on that campaign. I was working at AMREF at the time. And for me, that's when I learned fundraising and how hard it is, because we try to raise money from corporates. Corporates was a bit successful, individuals not so successful. And so you begin to learn, how audiences are different and how you need to treat them differently. And then for many of you who have Standard Chartered in your countries, the Seeing is Believing campaign, I think, may have run in your different countries, very successful campaign. In Kenya, we would have the Nairobi Marathon and a lot of prize money, so it would attract, of course, our elite athletes, and that would attract also a lot of Kenyans to come out and run and support this cause. And the campaign across the countries that it was running raised over $100 million to treat blindness, or avoidable blindness. So a very successful campaign there. I haven't put any sporting ones, but I'm sure we can Google those with time. All right. I think I've reached the end of my presentation, and I want to thank you, and I'll take any questions that may come up. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Wangoi, for giving us the donor's perspective. It's really, really interesting and intriguing. At least now we know what to do and how to align our requests and asks to the donor so that we don't get so many regrets. Sometimes we can get so many regrets and we don't know what we are doing wrong. So I think from this presentation, we will be able to minimize the number of regrets as we move forward. There's a question here, but before we go to the question, I wanted to ask one of my own, Wangui, and maybe it would be helpful for our delegates, because most of the delegates in this call are the CEOs or the national directors in their country. So they kind of drive fundraising, and also board chairperson. So because most of the time it's the board chairperson and the CEO that drive team. How would we take advantage of such? How would you advise our program leaders to take advantage of such and recruit some people like you in their probably fundraising teams or their board members, some people who have the knowledge and the expertise on driving fundraising? What would you advise our program leaders?
That's an interesting question. I think for me, and why it worked perfectly, I think, is because I have the personal interest in sports, in, of course, the administrative side of the sport, and I have the skills from marketing and from fundraising previously. I think you need to look at, when you're doing your strengths and your weaknesses, you will find that, and of course your stakeholder mapping, you will find that some of your board members, some of your volunteers actually have a wealth of experience that you didn't really know about or never really thought to exploit. And you can start there, because that's where I started. I started learning. So how do you look for those people? How do you expose them? How do you get them to support you, even with their time, just to help you think through some of your strategies? How do they support even some of the events or the activities that you do? And keep them close, you know? I know you don't have to pay them because most of these things are voluntary positions, but if someone has an interest, they will stay and they will always support you. So look already within your existing stakeholders. Those people are there. You will find them, and you can actually get them to support you.
Thank you. I think that's a very valid, a very good answer and very practical, because as Gustavo said, we boost a huge community, and I think among our stakeholders, we may not be utilizing all the expertise that we have around. So I think that's a very good answer. Now, Wangui, according to you, how would an organization like Special Olympics, maybe in a different country, budget for a marketing campaign or a marketing plan? Just a few tips on how to budget for that. I think that question was in the Q&A as you began.
Yeah, I've seen that question. Thank you for the question. It's a good question. I think, like any organization that is intending to do something and to do something successful, you have to put aside the resources that will support you to do that. You need to also look at where are these resources coming from. So if you're limited in the resources, don't imagine then that you can hold an event for 10,000 people, for example, because maybe you don't have the budget to do that. So start small, start with the other resources. How do you start using volunteers, for example, to help you just do fundraising letters and send those out? How do you then set aside, even from the revenue that you get or the money that comes in slowly, you need to allocate some money for marketing, for sponsorship, for these activities, because without that investment, then how do you then grow your fundraising program? You need to start somewhere. So don't think that today you'll go back and then you have this really big event and you'll be able to attract a lot of money. You have to start small, and starting small means even starting with nothing. Just get those letters out. Let people know who you are. Use social media. Social media is sometimes practically free. Find some influencers who can help to push your agenda and talk about you out there. The more you become known, then of course, the longer, well, the better that you are placed to start attracting bigger and bigger funds, and then diversifying the way that you fundraise. So you have to think, like I said in the beginning, once you do your strategy, what can you do now and what can you do 10 years from now, and work towards that plan. You can't do it all of it at once, for sure. Yeah.
Thank you, Wangoi. Very educative. Start from where you are and build, go building gradually. And maybe I should also add, because you've said about it's an investment, actually. It's not just something you do. It's an investment, which is also long-term. Maybe just to add on and borrow from what Gustavo said, once you do your probably operational plan with your annual budget, now you have a figure you can work with. And from what Gustavo told us, the rule of thumb is your investment towards marketing should be 10 times, should be 10 times, should not be 10 times what you want to achieve. So for example, if you have a budget of $500, then the marketing budget should be 10 times less that, so that you're able to reap out of the investment you put in place. So I think that's a good rule of thumb. Wangui, there was a question here, a very specific question. You may not be able to exhaust it today, but I think it's a good start. We have our friends from Special Olympics Ethiopia. I think they already know Safaricom is expanding to Ethiopia, and they wanted to know how they could probably start a relationship with Safaricom in Ethiopia.
Yes, so write to a colleague of mine. Her name is Nelly Kanja. I'll tell her that you're interested. I think you can drop off a letter. I don't know how it works in Ethiopia. And I don't have her email address right now, but Nelly Kanja in Ethiopia, she was my marketing colleague here. She moved to Ethiopia. She knows everything about sponsorships and fundraising for organizations like yourselves. And it's a good place to start. So I'll also reach out to her when I get an opportunity, let her know that you'll be reaching out. So please go ahead.
Susan, can I just come in really quickly on that one? I think it would be more effective if we, from the regional point of view, we facilitate that. Maybe through you, Susan, and us, we will facilitate that with our accredited program in Ethiopia. To avoid them going by themselves and introducing themselves. It's more effective. It's going to come, from us. And also just allow me while I'm while I'm speaking, Wangui, to thank you very much, most sincerely, for, sharing, the perspective of the donor's perspective in terms of fundraising. This sometimes we tend to stand on the one side of the river while we don't, go to the other side and experience what it is there in order for us to be relevant. So this brought so much relevance in terms of, what you need to do, because we have seen the other side, and that's yourself. You are the person. Look at the donations, the letters that are coming and the requests that are coming and how they should be. And you're the one who are deciding which one goes in the trash can and which one is being considered. And that came out very, very clear. So you hit the nail on the head perfectly well And we're very thankful for that. And something else that you mentioned, I just want to also appreciate the connections that we have in Special Olympics. We have education, we have youth, those connections, we have health. Inclusion is big. Many times companies, we don't realize sometimes that we tend to speak to ourselves, but getting somebody from outside, like we did today with you and Gustavo, you've spoken about inclusion, but from the other side, and that makes a lot of sense. So we are really, really thankful for that perspective. And the big word and the continuous word here we've seen is relevance, relevance, relevance. Everything we do has to be relevant. You don't do anything that is not relevant, or else it's not going to go anywhere. They will say thank you on their face, but in reality is that it's not relevant. And I think you have set a very, very good, stepping stone to the next, session this afternoon, which will have to do with the best practice and getting one of our programs that is going to speak about what they're already doing, but that's for later. But let me also just say one more thing. Gustavo and you, and this is not for you, Wangui, and not for Gustavo, but to our programs. And I posted this in the chat, because we normally get questions from programs that is related to this, and it's the question of tobacco and alcohol. And I just want to request our program leaders there to go to the general rules 5.09b of the general rules, which is very clear that no accredited program shall permit the name Special Olympics, the Special Olympics logo, or any other Special Olympics mark to be publicly or visibly connected or associated with the name or trademark of any of the following companies or products. This is the tobacco products or alcohol beverages. So it's just something that we want to always alert our programs. The general rules are so many to read, but when we have an opportunity to say this on a call like this, and we get so many questions, say, I found a sponsor from this beer company, can I go ahead? So please refer to 5.09. However, if your company, a beverage company, like I know in Namibia there's one, but they also have soft drinks and water, you can tell them that, hey, listen, give me that sponsorship through your soft drinks, not your alcohol. So there are ways of going around this, but not directly from an alcohol company. I just want to clarify that. Sorry, Susan, you can go ahead. Thank you. Thank you again one more time, Ongoi. Really, really appreciate your support and your time and being with us today.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Charles. I think what you said was very, very important about our programs and the alcohol, tobacco, and I think firearm companies. I think it's very, very important to have that information. Wangui, there's a question, I think it keeps on popping up on accountability for us as who go to seek donations or seek sponsorships. How can accountability affect our fundraising? And I think the question is from the point of governance. As you said in your presentation, you need to trust us. And now there's the question of accountability and governance. Could you just say something about that?
Okay, let me just maybe paint it with an example. So imagine I'm sitting at my desk and I'm receiving these sponsorship proposals, and I recognize Special Olympics, for example. And I know the history of Special Olympics, and I know this is a good organization, I can trust it. So I don't delve too deeply. I don't look too deeply or too closely. But I also get another proposal from an organization I've never heard of ever in my life. They purport to be in existence for the last 10 years, and they're doing certain things in the market. And so I'm like, oh, if they've been there 10 years, how come I've never heard about them? Let me Google them. So I will Google them. And if I am not sufficiently, I guess, pleased with what I find online, I will ask somebody, oh, have you ever heard of this organization? And there are lots of people to ask, because remember, we all have networks. It's not just the people we work with. We have networks at home, we have networks with our friends, we have networks in other places, social places. So if you're a very networked individual, somebody will know something about somebody somewhere, and it always helps to just ask. And you know where to ask. So if it's a sports organization, for example, I'll ask in my sports circles, do you guys know these guys? So we look at, yes, organizations, yes, they have a clean slate in terms of there are no scandals or haven't had any scandals that we know of, because sometimes there could be scandals, but we don't know about them. We look at what information is available. Are they a briefcase organization or not when they're saying that they are? So there are little things that are telltale signs around even how the organization is set up. And then, of course, I guess, ethical practices of the people who are running that organization. So imagine if, and I think lack for a better example, if you are a corrupt individual and you've started an NGO and it's known in your country or in your area that that is what that NGO has been set up to do, maybe to clean money or to siphon funds, I am not likely to sponsor you, because I know that, you know, that is a bad decision that I'm making. So I think it's important to keep your reputation clean and above board, and always watch that, because that is your selling point. That is what is your ticket in the door. Like I said, remember, when you're going through lots of these proposals, what is the one thing that stands out from your organization? So first of all, you're recognizable, because, you know, maybe you've built your history over time, and so a lot more people know about you. But also that you have a clean, professional board that, you know, doesn't have any scandals associated with it. Because remember, nowadays, everything is online. We will Google, and when we find scandalous information, we'll drop you like a hot potato. We've done this in the past, and not just for organizations that we sponsor, but also individuals that we use even to help us run events. So for example, if you are a news presenter and I've used you to become an MC in an event, and then you have a scandal associated with you maybe next weekend or a month from now, I will never use you again. And what that does is it ends your line of a relationship with me forever, and it ends that line of revenue for you. So you can imagine, if that is what we do to individuals, organizations is even worse, because we also have a corporate reputation to protect, and we do not want that association. So it's important to have, as individuals who are running an organization, have that clean background, but also as an organization, avoid the scandals. And if you do find yourself getting into a scandal, you need to turn it around in your favor. And I don't know how that would work, but maybe the scandal really wasn't your fault, or something happened, but you need to get out of it and clean your reputation. Otherwise, you know, we will not touch you. And I think I speak for many sponsors and donors as well. Yeah.
Susan, can I just come in? Thank you so much. I'm very, very happy you brought that up, Wangui. Just to from the Special Olympics point of view, and also the accreditation system that is there, and there's a screening system from our Special Olympics International legal department. Board of directors of every program are screened, and that's why we ask them to before they recruit. any new board members to go through that process, because when a brand is, it's very, very easy to, to tarnish a brand, but to build it, it will take years. And we, in terms of in the Africa region, we are, for the past 15 years now, we're constantly conducting governance training. Not that just to help, all the new board members that are coming in to understand that what exactly you said, so that we safeguard the brand and we safeguard, the resources that they would like to request for, because organizations will associate with a good brand. So I'm very, very happy that you mentioned that, and that's the reason, speaking now to program leaders that are on the call, that's the reason we constantly are asking to say, governance training every year. We conduct that to ensure that we have a, you can't have, obviously, with so many programs that we lead, you can't have an entirely squeaky clean record. But when we find it, we have a risk management, process that we deal with. So thank you so much. That was a very, very good, valid point that you brought up. Susan, thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Charles. Sorry. Thank you, Charles. And thank you, Wangui, once again for a very, very vibrant presentation and also conversation. I think you've touched a lot of nerves for all of us here, and you've tasked us to go and think and act and make sure that by all means, we don't get any regret letters this this year. So that was very, very a very vibrant presentation ongoing. In the Q&A, we had another question on board members. I think we will not answer that question in this session, probably before the end of the training or even beyond, before the end of conference or even beyond. Charles may be able to contact that program that asked the question on board members directly, because I think that's a very specific question for a specific program. There was also a question on resources. From this training, you'll be able to receive all these presentations and a few other resources our kind speakers have been able to put together for us to continue using. And Wangui mentioned, when she was mentioning about mapping your potential sponsors, she mentioned about government being a very, very, very key donor and sponsor. Just for your information, sometimes in the year, we are going also to have another session dedicated to government funding together with our colleagues from SOI. So this is just the beginning. We'll still be giving you more and more information around this area. So Wangui, asante sana for a very, very, very vibrant conversation. We really, really appreciate.